So, yeah, before I start, just want to, well, as I start now, just want to remind everyone watching this live that this week I've got a space for 5 free conscious discovery calls. So, for anyone who wants to heal from chronic ill health, just put a Y in the comments below if anyone wants a free discovery call with me to find and start understanding what they could do to find the root cause of a health condition and what to do to heal personally, then that is available. Okay, so this is a live stream about asthma. It's specifically about bronchial asthma, which is the most common form of asthma. There are a few other kinds, but most cases of asthma are diagnosed as bronchial asthma. And the reason I'm doing this live stream is to, firstly, to spread awareness of meta consciousness, which is a system to understand the root cause of whatever your body is doing. And specifically in this case, and what you can do once you have that information to actually heal yourself from these so-called incurable conditions. Now, incurable is a funny word because, of course, it's talking about external cures. So there's no external cure to many conditions. And there's always this quest in the world, it seems, to find a cure for this, cure for that. People are looking for something outside themselves to heal. But what if it's not about finding a cure from the outside? And of course, there's many great symptom treatments that you can use to improve your situation in most conditions, holistic and medical. However, it's not about finding an external cure. It's about understanding the internal way that you can heal yourself. So all true healing is self-healing. And in particular, I'm going to talk about that today relating to asthma, bronchial asthma, as I said already, because I was recently delighted to receive 9 months after I'd been working with someone on their asthma and finding the root cause, a message from them that they no longer had any asthma symptoms when the situation that would normally cause them to have these heavy asthma symptoms was triggered. So this particular individual, every time they got a cold, no matter how light the cold, over the last 20 years, they would basically end up with 4 weeks of incredibly heavy bronchial asthma symptoms, which not only led them to feel physically terrible and have all the struggles relating to breathing and being able to live their normally very optimistic and happy life, but it also really dragged them down emotionally, energetically, and they just felt terrible about themselves. So I'll read out what they wrote to me 9 months later. So they wrote, well, I'll read the testimonial they gave me, which was: Sam and I worked at the beginning of the year for 6 sessions, concentrating on exploring the history of asthma in my life and using tapping and matrix work to address the underlying emotional causes. So I felt supported and held by Sam in these deep sessions. 9 months later, the trigger for the asthma occurred in my life, and I'm thrilled to say that I did not develop any asthma at all. So that was got a cold for the first time in the 9 months since we'd worked together, and then no asthma symptoms when normally she would have been bedbound and in a lot of trouble. After 20 years of having to take at times heavy medication for asthma, it seems to have cleared. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, matrix work. Now, matrix work is a form of EFT tapping, which I'll cover a bit later on when we come to the actual treatment. Now, just want to say I'm hosting this on a watch party as well as a Facebook Live. So wherever you're watching, ask questions and I will try and come to them. I'm going to probably answer most of the questions at the end, but feel free to type the comments, type the questions in at any time. And please, if you're watching, wherever you're watching this, please click a heart react or just write hi in the comments. All interaction helps to get this out across the Facebook megasphere to more and more people. So that would be super appreciated. Any reacts that you could do other than sads, of course, or angry, unless you're sad or angry with me. Okay, right. So I'm going to, before we get on to asthma specifically, I just want to talk about meta-consciousness. So what is meta-consciousness? Well, meta-consciousness is basically the understanding of the body's intelligence and how you can use this understanding to not only heal yourself from physical conditions, it's also it's teaches you how to use the information that you get from that physical conditions and also mental behavior patterns. It also teaches you how to use the information that you learn to live a better life, more in line with who you are as part of your healing journey and then beyond. So you can truly create a life that is much more in line with who you are and start living more fulfillment and personal freedom. And that's what really excites me about this. It's not just about getting better and then going back to your life. It's about improving and making your whole life better as well as healing. And it comes from the viewpoint of the body being intelligent. So if you look at the conventional medical model, the idea is that if something's happened in the body, so for example, asthma, whatever symptoms you've got, it means that part of the body has malfunctioned in some way. It's gone wrong, and it's not it's not working as it should be. Looking at each part in isolation, and that's not how it's seen from the meta-consciousness model. So meta-consciousness is evolved from German New Medicine and Meta Health, and many other, lots of other input into that as well. And it's the belief and understanding with a lot of backing from experiments and actual research showing that the body is intelligently adapting to specific situations going on in your life. And there's two cycles that happen in any what you might call a disease process or healing cycle. I prefer healing cycle because it's all about your body endeavoring to heal. And the first thing is a stressful event or life pattern happens, and it causes your body to go into stress mode. When you are in the stress mode, you do get some symptoms. Some symptoms happen during the stress phase for people, but most of the time it's more like mental symptoms going on. So obsessive thoughts, you have higher energy to try and resolve whatever the stressful situation or theme and life pattern is in your life. Then at some point you have a different understanding. You get some form of acceptance, which can either be a positive situation, or it can be a negative acceptance, a resigned to this is the way my life is, that sort of thing. But whatever happens, it then pushes your body goes out of the stress phase into restoration phase. And in the restoration phase, often you feel very tired because it's time to rest, and physical symptoms often happen in this stage. So it's often because the body tissues affected are trying to rebuild themselves or endeavoring to rebuild themselves, and or if in the stress phase the particular body tissue expanded in size to try and deal with whatever the situation was, then it might be that particular body tissue might be shrinking and also releasing various fluids as it's kind of, well, decomposes to get back to normality, health equilibrium, effectively. So most symptoms, and certainly a lot of the physical symptoms, happen in this restoration phase. And I'll try to talk about that a bit more in a moment, specifically when we're talking about asthma. But every symptom in the stress phase has a biological purpose. It's trying to adapt your body to a specific situation. And then the restoration or regeneration phase is the healing from that, but it feels like the bad bit for most people. It's when for most of the worst symptoms actually happen. So it's a big thing to talk. It's a very different way of viewing health. And probably if you want more information on meta health and how it works, then, or meta consciousness rather, check out my website. I'll put a link to some more explanation of that at the end. And you can also get in touch with me for one of the free discovery calls if you want to find out how it fits in with symptoms in your life. So, okay, so in terms of asthma specifically, bronchial asthma specifically, so what is the biological purpose of bronchial asthma? Why is it happening? Well, bronchial asthma is actually a situation where there have been two particular triggers. So two different emotional triggers have happened, and broadly they're both around territorial conflicts. And so this means that your space being invaded or something leaving your space that you want within your space, causing a conflict for you. In particular, there's the main tissue that gets triggered every time in bronchial asthma is the bronchial membranes and muscles. And the biological purpose is in the stress phase, these actually thin and make wider airways. So the idea is that it's actually giving the body the ability to take in more air to be able to compete better in territorial situations, be able to try and strive for what it is that you need, and to be able to literally roar your invader, I was going to say enemy, might not be an enemy, roar your invader away. So roar the enemy out of the boundaries. So yeah, seeing lots of people joining is fantastic. If just help get this information out there, just give me a heart react or say hi, anything like that. All interaction helps and greatly appreciated. So yeah, so in the stress phase, which you don't really notice the symptom happening in the stress phase, you notice that you might notice feeling stressed at whatever's happened in your environment. I'll come on to some examples of that. But then, yeah, in the regeneration phase, because the bronchial muscles and membranes and mucosa have to heal, then it creates a lot of mucus. They swell up, as inflammation always happens in a regeneration phase. So wherever you've got inflammation happening in your body, that is your body trying to heal in some way. You can certainly get stuck in that healing cycle, and it's really important to know that. And a lot of people do get stuck in this restoration phase, which is when people tend to go to doctors actually when they are feeling when they're feeling worse, but the body is actually endeavoring to heal. Okay, so for the asthma, the time when people really need the inhalers and everything is after an acceptance has happened. This can be an entirely subconscious process, so it's not like you've consciously gone, oh, I accept that now, but the body has subconsciously associated, that something's changed that's enabled you to basically start the healing process. And part of that is unfortunately the healing symptoms for most things don't feel very nice, because you feel like lower in energy, down, and you've also got the physical symptoms such as the constricted airways, production of excessive mucus, etc., that's happening in the bronchial asthma. So specific things that can trigger bronchial asthma, well, basically, as I said, it's caused by two different triggers. So many physical conditions are generally caused by just one, and then one specific body tissue gets affected. However, with asthma, bronchial asthma, it's called a constellation, which means there's two triggers have happened. It's triggered two different parts of your brain, and then the associated body tissues that go with those parts of the brain. And the first one is that there is going to be the bronchial mucosa and muscle and membranes is triggered by these territorial conflicts, which are either basically a territorial invasion of space, or it can be often from more of a female perception, which doesn't have to be necessarily but it's a woman, but it's triggered in the more sort of feminine energy aspect, a shocking speechlessness conflict. So something that was so shocking that you couldn't even cry out, you couldn't even scream, you were so in it. So that could be one of the conflicts, is either this territorial invasion style conflict or the speechless shocking conflict. And then there's a range of other conflicts that could happen at the same time, and any one of these or more than one of these even happening alongside one of the territorial bronchial muscle conflict could lead to the asthma happening. And you could have it could be a sexual frustration conflict is one that could trigger, that could be the second sort of trigger point, along with the territorial conflict. Identity or self-identity being challenged in some way, and things like respect or lack of respect happening. So, it could be imagine that happening if your space is invaded and it feels like a lack of respect to your sort of private space or whatever. This could be the two things which could set into place this constellation of which leads to the bronchial asthma behavior pattern and physical symptoms actually happening. Great to see everyone joining. Any questions that you've got, drop them in the comments. It'd be great just to have a hi or whatever, heart reacts, get this out to more people. Everything like that gets Facebook to share it more out in the Facebookosphere or whatever it's called. So yeah, so you've got these specific territorial conflict or shocking speechlessness conflict, along with those other types of triggers that lack of respect, not deserving respect, feeling trapped, all of these sorts of things. All of that together can lead to this big territorial conflict of bronchial asthma being triggered. Now, there's one thing as well which can make it even worse, and this is a huge pattern in pretty much everyone I work with on any chronic health condition runs this pattern as well. And it's a very interesting pattern because the stress of it often happens at the same time as the healing phase of the other symptoms. So when the main symptoms go into the restoration phase, this pattern, which makes everything worse, tends to kick in. And it is basically, if you run a theme of isolation, abandonment, and survival shock on the back of isolation and abandonment, or basically isolation and abandonment in any way, super common in our society these days. You know, how many people feel lonely, isolated, sort of stuck on their own, and the stress of that can actually make any physical symptoms which involve inflammation, which is most restoration phase symptoms, actually get worse, because it encourages the body to hold more liquid and fluid in any place that it can. So inflammations can swell up bigger. In the case of, you know, of asthma, in the lung tissues regenerating, if there's inflammation there, it's going to be worse. If there's an isolation and abandonment conflict, so absolutely, and that is always the first thing to explore, I believe, in any any chronic health condition, especially if there's any form of inflammation involved, any swelling, any water retention, anything like that. Explore isolation and abandonment, find out the reasons that someone's feeling isolated and abandoned, and release them. So just going to give you some examples now. Now, this is one. Now, this could be quite potentially triggering as a parent, but you know, this is all things that we all do occasionally as parents, and yeah, it's just being conscious of these things. But if there's a chronic pattern of these, it could be something that can lead to asthma in children. So, you know, for example, leaving your child when they don't want you to, you know, and has to happen for every single parent and child in the world at some point. So it's how it's done, I suppose, but that is something that is a territorial conflict for a small child, because something that they demand and must have in their space, or else they will feel that this is my survival at risk here, potentially, is leaving them in a territory. Could be an unfamiliar territory of a nursery or something like that, for example. So leaving your child when they don't want it, or if they've been, or you know, it going into their space when they want to be left alone, anything like this, or and even things that they cannot communicate to you. These can be things that can start to trigger this pattern of asthma. So these can be you know, these tiny, it's often tiny little events in our lives when we're young, can start to spiral and create patterns that get bigger and bigger in our lives. And very important, I think, not to have any blame for this, because it's not actually the body going wrong. Remember, it's there. If any symptoms are a sign that the body is endeavoring to resolve some sort of issue going on in life, and in this case, territorial conflicts. You know, many children they grow out of asthma because they've naturally resolved the conflicts. Not every health condition requires intervention, actually, of any sort of healing work such as EFT, matrix reimprinting. Many times we go through a full healing cycle, or a full series of healing cycles, and then eventually the body has done what it needs to do. We've had full acceptance, let go of whatever the past issue was, and being able to basically resolve and move on. But it's when things get stuck, when we've not been able to have a full acceptance, not been able to make peace with the past. We've got an isolation and abandonment conflict, making the symptoms worse in the restoration phase. So you can't complete the healing. Then that is when it's great to have the ability to really reflect, find out what the root cause is, and do whatever needs to be done to change the life and heal. And I'll come on to some of that in a minute. Okay, by the way, I know I'm using some complex terms here. It's a new way of looking at health and the world. Quite a lot of meta people on here anyway, but yeah, anyone who's got any questions, you know, I'm very happy to answer anything that anything that you haven't understood. Just drop a comment, whether you're on the watch party or on the live stream, and I will be doing what I can to yeah, answer as many questions as we go. Okay, so yeah, so number one is heal the isolation abandonment conflict, leading to a sense of community, which is incredibly important for people to heal. So that any chronic health condition, that's actually where I always start, is looking at isolation abandonment. And if it's not there, then great. But if it is there, then there's things that can be done to heal it. And then looking at the territorial conflicts and finding, now there's various different things, various different ways that you can heal territorial conflicts. Number one is look at what, as use techniques such as EFT, matrix reimprinting, along with questioning through understandings from meta consciousness to find the root cause, those events when people were very young, which might have started a process to be in place. So find out when they had their territory invaded, when they felt when they felt that they didn't have their own space, etc. Now, yeah, a client that sent me that testimonial, they had they had this sense of being trapped and stuck between their arguing parents and feeling isolated and abandoned at the same time as having as like they were on their own, with, as many young children often have, this idea, that this perception that it's all their fault and therefore they're responsible for trying to fix it. Now, children before the age of 6 or 7 basically think that way because they have they well, initially they don't even see the world as separate from themselves, but then after a while, you know, they do see the separation, but they still see everything as happening literally as related to them, until around the age of 7 or so, when they start being able to differentiate between what's between taking everything literally and seeing things in a different way. They start to become able of critical thinking at about age 6 or 7, and interpreting things rather than just taking them literally. But anything that happens before that, they can feel that they are responsible for it. They have to fix it. It's literally to do with them. So in this case, you know, being trapped between two unhappy parents and doing their best, thinking that they had to fix it, but they were also alone in it. That was the shocking trauma, which led the shocking speechlessness trauma and territorial conflict, along with lack of respect for them, or their perceived lack of respect of them being important in any way, and the isolation abandonment, all led to this asthma conflict. Initially, it started with them as pneumonia, which left them in hospital, and that's why it then came on every time they got a cold in their life. So there was a lot to clear with going back and actually resolving those specific events. Sometimes you can't find a specific event, and that's also fine too, because then you look at the theme in the life, and if there's a theme of feeling invaded, feeling of not having enough space, feeling of not being respected, an ongoing theme, then not all healing comes from healing the past. That's the first place to look, but then you can also heal by looking forwards as well and starting to create more of what people want. What's this condition, what's this symptom telling me I need to change in my life, so that I can actually move forward, for example, with more community, with the people who respect and love me and give me my space, but are also there for me. So, that's just examples off the top of my head of, ways that you can use the future to transform your life as well. It's not always about the past. So, yeah, it's ideally you're working with both. You're working with the future, you're working with the past to create the present opportunity for real healing. So that's the emotional side. But there's more to it than that. There's we are wonderfully complex beings, and there's many different areas that we can explore to transform things. So yeah, of course, you've got to symptom treat first of all. Now, asthma actually is probably it. You know, there's very successful medical symptom treatments for asthma. For most people, they can control it very well with inhalers and medications, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very important. And like all medication gives you space to do the deeper healing if you need the medication. So it's never a case of you have to do medication or you have to do the holistic route. If you absolutely medication, whether it's physical medication such as asthma inhalers, Ventolin, whatever other there's various other inhalers that people use. That's important to keep using that. If it's psychologically, just going into sort of mental health, pills can give you space to create new habits. So because you're not having the effects of the worst effects of the depression, anxiety, whatever, to make new habits, so that when you do come off the medication with the help of your doctor, for example, then you don't have the habit in place anymore, but you've had the time to create the space, basically. So symptom treatments, of course, medication, super important. There's some great breathing methods, many breathing methods which purport to help asthma, and I know that one called Buteyko breathing is great. So that's one you can learn the basics of it even on YouTube, but it's a very non-intuitive way of learning of breathing based on what we've been taught, because then we've been taught big deep breaths is what you need, but this is a very shallow, and you and taking pauses on the out breath. So, and it actually puts you out of fight or flight, so out of stress into the sort of recovery, the parasympathetic nervous system, just through this breathing mechanism. So really highly recommend that for people with asthma. There's these salt pipes. They can be very good for some people. So check them out. They're an alternative to inhaler and again, more restorative, because it's not like you just take it when you need a puff. You're something that you can use daily, 15 minutes or so, I think it is, and it helps the lungs. These were useful for my partner Star, and also for my son, really like this when he's had breathing things happening. So those, and tapping, EFT tapping on symptoms, absolutely fantastic. It's if you haven't tried tapping, whatever your symptoms are, it can help you to release symptoms. Now, without resolving the root cause, symptoms are likely to come back. But most of all, you really want to use tapping first of all for symptom treatment, and then finding the root cause. And that can be, that's where the meta consciousness analysis comes in. That's where using things like matrix reimprinting to find the past events, this all really supports you. So yeah, any questions as people join? Yeah, anything anyone wants to say? Anyone got any questions about this? We'll just come on to some more examples of, continue with the healing process in a minute, but you've got the symptom treatments first of all. The next one is healing past events. So I've talked about this already. My preferred treatments are using matrix reimprinting, EFT, other tapping techniques. You can also do this with NLP, hypnosis, regression therapy, anything like that. You might even find it goes into, some people go to ancestral patterns. That in my wife's case, we explored some stuff from the past, and just resolving attachments to old patterns. And that was massively healing for asthma. You might also find that you might, but it's more likely to be stuff that happened in early years or even more recently, because you can develop asthma as an adult through shocking traumas and territorial conflicts happening as well. So yeah, so resolving the attachment to those, brilliant techniques we've got now to be able to do this very, very quickly, much more effectively than talk therapy, because you're actually releasing the emotional charge from these past events as well, rather than just getting a good map of what happened. So that's very effective. If there's not specific events that you can find, then but there's a theme, so a theme of being bullied over and over again, for example, and you can't point out which was the worst. It might have been hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of events, or even there's just this constant feeling of not being happy at home because being in the middle of this conflict between the two parents and feeling the responsibility every single day. There's other techniques that we can use to actually release the attachment to the whole pattern. And this is kind of like a fractal healing process. It works on many events at the same time, thousands of events even, and then points out at the end of it the most important ones to then pinpoint and heal with EFT, with matrix reimprinting. Very effective, and gives really good resources for individuals to create a future more in line with who they are once they've released this themselves from this pattern as well. So yeah, so that's a great one that you can use too. So yeah, so clearing specific events, clearing life themes, changing your life to actually changing your life, creating new ways of being. So having more community, not feeling like you're spaced, and not having these trigger events. Once you realize what triggers, if it's a physical thing, of course, in the case of if it's a cold, then it's a cold that's happened. Whatever reason that cold's happening, it doesn't need to trigger you into the asthma again is great. If there's any, but yeah, if it's more about actually creating your own space, having space for yourself, having good boundaries, these are all things that might be part of the territorial conflicts. Of course, very important. Then there's also things like diet and exercise. So, and this can be different for every individual. I can't really give advice on those areas, but this is an area where whatever specialist you trust to support you with your diet, with the right exercises for you, this is something that you can totally explore with them. So you've got symptom treatments, as of course, medication, breathing methods, things like some holistic things like the salt pipe, tapping, EFT tapping on symptoms. Just some examples. There's many more symptom treatments you can use. Clearing the unexpected, shocking events from the past which fit in with these health conditions, using techniques like matrix, emotional freedom techniques, NLP, hypnosis. Any of those things can really support to clear that. Using the release and replace process on the themes, and then working out how to actually resolve those themes further in your life. So changing your life so those are no longer a part of your life anymore, so you don't have the territorial conflicts. You start to create a life with better boundaries, really sure that you are getting respect, hanging out with people, not feeling isolated and abandoned anymore. All of those things can really, really help. And then, and then the bottom up healing with the physical healing from, exploring diet and exercise. Yeah, I think some people find that for whatever reason, dairy products can exacerbate their symptoms. So that's one thing that people might want to explore. Right, okay, so I've covered a lot today. There's undoubtedly more that I could have covered, but as with all of these lives, hopefully it's given you a bit of an understanding or some insights into what might be happening. If anyone's got any questions, then I'd love to answer them. Feel free to, just drop them in the comments. I'm just going to look and see if there's anything. And also, I'm also happy to now open it up to wider comments on meta consciousness in any way. So anything to do with self-healing and how the meta-conscious and understanding of meta-consciousness, what it is, how it can help people to understand the root cause of health. Any questions on that? I can't guarantee that I can answer relating to any specific health condition because I'm not a medical dictionary. But if you have got any questions like that, of course, I'm very happy to go away and look that sort of stuff up for you and support with that. So, okay, while I'm waiting, just going to say again, just remind you that I'm offering. I've got 5 spots for conscious discovery calls this week for anyone who is tired of struggling with an ongoing health condition or susceptibility to health conditions or whatever. Then you can book in a free call with me for about 30 to 45 minutes where we can really explore what's going on and actually create a potential route forwards for healing. So, yeah, just feel free to, if you want one of those, just type a Y in the comments and I'll get back to you with the information, or you can message me. Very happy to offer those, spread the information of how this works, and it's been very successful. Had that fantastic result communicated to me from that client, which I read out earlier. Just going to read it one more time, as for people who have joined partway through. There's a testimonial from a client I got 9 months after working on the asthma that she experienced after every cold. And it's just very quickly. I didn't ask for it; it came as well, which was cool. Sam and I worked at the beginning of the year for 6 sessions, concentrating on exploring the history of asthma in my life and using tapping and matrix work to address the underlying emotional causes. Felt supported and held. 9 months later, the trigger for the asthma occurred in my life. I'm thrilled to say I did not develop any asthma. After over 20 years of having to take at times heavy medication for asthma, it seems to have cleared. And there's a bit more to it, but that's the gist of it. So, yeah, right, okay, last shout out for any questions. I'll just look at the watch party again. Yep, no one, no questions in there. And yeah, okay, I think that is a wrap. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found that useful. Get in touch if you want any more information. I'm also happy if people want lives on specific conditions, drop me a message and I'll see if I can do something about that. So have a great Saturday, lots of love, and catch you next time.